Hello again, and welcome to Looking at Social Justice. I'm Jim Gran, and it's the 80th chance that I've had to share with you, our podcast listeners and our YouTube viewers and our TV audience, someone from usually the San Joaquin Valley working in the area of social justice in some aspect. Well, we actually have a very special guest today who's only been here with us at Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability for the past 4 or 5 months. Luis Huerta-Silva comes to us, well, from the California Valley here, from the state, but then went away to South Bend. You've heard of that place? Notre Dame is located there. He'll tell us a little bit about his background at that great university, and then he'll tell us how it is that since his undergraduate years at that university and in other settings, he's been very committed to social justice, to immigration, to the advancement of people, human rights, and obviously the job at Leadership Council as civic engagement coordinator puts him definitely engaging with the people that we in the diocese are also working with. Luis, it's so nice meeting you and having a chance to have you talk about yourself and the Notre Dame, and then finally Leadership Council. Tell us something about any of those 3 great things.
First of all, thank you for having me, Jim. I think Notre Dame was definitely an experience. Growing up here in the Valley, I'm very much used to rural areas, having fresh fruits, my family being involved in working in the fields, being very much involved in agriculture, and so the complete change in setting, including weather, did not come without its, without its issues, getting used to. I remember coming home the first Christmas, and my mom looked at me all worried, asking, "Are you sick?" No, it's just lack of sun.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame was an amazing experience. I really got to myself establish more my Catholic faith, but more specifically in terms of a vocation and in social justice work, and that led me to being involved in the Mecha chapter at Notre Dame, where we organized around the workers on campus. A couple of my friends led a couple campaigns where the shirt would be produced by a producer that would actually make them in a just way, paying living wages, ensuring that workers had rights. And beyond that, I was able to move to Chicago and work in the immigration field, specifically defending against deportations, educating our communities, registering new citizens to vote, doing citizenship workshops. It kept me busy, but it was a passion. It's a passion of mine.
And I would have thought they only did those things at Boston College. I am so glad that Notre Dame does it too.
I'm sorry you attended Boston.
I am so glad that you're sharing that at a school you were getting a vocation. Exactly. And that vocation has carried you now back to California. How did you, and exactly what is civic engagement coordination at Leadership Council?
Well, civic engagement overall is some sort of involvement with public life. And what do I mean by public life? Upcoming right now, we have the Census 2020, ensuring communities are counted, participating publicly in that manner. One more frequent, or one that we most know as regularly, is the elections.
Oh, yeah.
Ensuring voters are educated on the mannerisms or the way that you're going to be voting, which for Fresno County is changing this year. But beyond that, how are you engaging with our elected officials, having accountability, having them be accountable to our communities? And it's beyond voting, right? It's through calls, engaging community residents through meetings, and things like that. So it's really thinking about how are those most vulnerable and those least engaged, how are we providing those pathways for engagement?
I've been connected with Leadership Council basically through a lot of your lawyers over different statements that they've been making at these fantastic meetings with the supervisors or the city council. How did the process happen that you landed at Leadership Council?
I landed at Leadership Council it's because it's very personal to me. Leadership Council works around climate issues and how they affect the well-being of our residents. Recently, my dad had a more severe case, and we developed the COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and he's
Sorry.
a lifetime agricultural worker. And so seeing his condition, I could only imagine is exponential across all our communities that work in
Yep.
agriculture. And so in doing my research, moving back from Chicago, I saw Leadership Council in the news all the way from Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, and my curiosity was piqued. And next thing you know, the applications were available. I came back to California and was lucky to receive an interview.
I am so glad. I'm sorry for your dad, but to see that from a family situation, you would see the need to do something not only for him, but for the millions who
Right.
suffer from climate, from the way we have not taken care of our environment, and then to commit to it and to say, I'm there for that. Now, we wanted to spend most of our energy today, our time, over one particular issue is the VCA. So why don't you introduce us maybe to Leslie Martinez and tell us a little bit about her. We're going to see her on a little clip, and then let's talk about how voting is changing and how we on this show want to get people on board.
Yes, the Voters' Choice Act, also known as VCA, was passed in 2016. And so to give a little overview, my colleague Leslie Martinez, who's an advocate, policy advocate for our organization, works primarily with rural areas in Fresno, holding community meetings, helping them advocate for themselves. And so she's given us a great brief introduction into the new voting system.
Let's see Leslie.
Hey Fresno County, voting just got way easier thanks to the Voters' Choice Act. Now, instead of going to our precinct-specific polling places, we get to go to voting centers throughout the county. 10 of them are going to be open for 11 days, 40 for 4 days, and over 33 ballot boxes throughout the county for you to drop off your ballots in a secure fashion. Finally, if you're a registered voter, don't worry, you don't have to request a ballot. You're going to get it mailed 29 days before the March 3rd election. We don't care how you do it, just make sure you go out and vote.
So we couldn't have Leslie here, but there she was, 33 seconds worth. What more do you want to tell us, Luis, about this change, the practical differences we're going to notice, the opportunities that we're suddenly going to have, how Fresno as a county joins other counties? Tell us all about that.
I think first and foremost is the idea of voter registration, ensuring that it is currently up to date and accurate. Because with this new voting system, as opposed to prior where you requested a vote by mail ballot, now it's an automatic procedure for the county. So what that means is voters need to ensure or take initiative to review that their voter registration is accurate. And one way to determine that is the county has already mailed, one in December and one in January, 2 flyers or 2 informational mailers informing people of the upcoming changes. So if you, as a registered voter, you know you're registered, have not received those documents, I would highly suggest you review your registration. Because with the upcoming election, on February 3rd, your actual ballot will be mailed to you.
So if someone hears this and they say, I don't remember receiving, maybe I threw it away, what exactly do they do now?
They can go to voterstatus.ca.sos.gov
Well, let's
with the Secretary of State, but it's easy to Google, voter status California, and review your voter status there.
So if we go there, it basically indicates how we are presently listed.
Exactly. It will list your address in which you are registered. It would also designate your political party with which you registered. And then you'll know next steps with that. So, for example, in terms of party preference, many people that I know have registered no party preference. And so, what that means for primary elections in particular, if they'd like to vote with a particular party, it is the responsibility of the no party preference registered voter to indicate whether they would like to receive a cross ballot, which only certain parties allow, or if whether they will need to register with a particular party that doesn't allow the cross ballot.
Anything else to tell us about the registration process?
Yes. So where before you had to register at minimum 15 days or more before any election, now we have what's called conditional voter registration. And so what that means is from 14 days all the way up to very even election day, eligible citizens are able to register to vote then and there at any what is now called voter centers or even with the county clerk's office. And so what is needed for that, or just to understand why is it considered conditional, all that really means is that the county clerk will need to verify your information in order to make your registration now permanent. But you can still cast your ballot then and there.
So this is a change.
Definitely.
I looked on a map of California and learned that though it started in 2016, this whole idea of the VCA, it seems that different counties have opted in periodically. So we're joining the team this year.
Yes.
Is there a way to know that other counties, like Madera did this 2 years ago?
Right, in 2016.
Do we have a way, and I guess you're going to say yes, that it proves that this effort to have more people registered and voting and participating, that it actually works, that the numbers show greater turnout? Is this?
Yes, definitely. You could what you can do to see the numbers in raw data to the county clerk's office. They always publish how many people are registered to vote by each election year and how many people actually vote. And so in comparison to say 2014 compared to the 2016 elections in Madera, you see a significant increase. And so what that means for Fresno County in particular is in 2018 election, there was approximately 450,000 voters where about 200,000 actually turned out to vote, 250 or so. So what that means is this is an opportunity to increase our 51, 53% voter turnout because more people will actually be receiving the ballots.
Who has, in a sense, been the driving force to make this much more accessible, to make voting more successful, effective, efficient?
Community-based education, community-based organizations that have been working alongside those most vulnerable in our communities. Time and time again, whether it's in social services, whether it's repairing roads, we've seen these communities be ignored many times. And so what we're doing is really taking back, the people power, and again, holding our officials accountable. And one of the manners that we can do that, again, is by voting, right? Ensuring that they're responding to the needs of our communities.
So one obvious community-based organizations is Leadership Council.
Of course.
Because of how you advocate and you lead, you organize, you initiate, and you just are such a driving force. What are some other partners that you've already met since September? Who are some other community forces that you've noticed doing the same grassroots efforts?
Oh, the organizations are countless, but off the bat, a couple organizations that we're currently working with in Fresno efforts include Jakarta Movement, they include the ACLU Foundation in Northern California, Council for American Islamic Relations, Faith in the Valley, please don't let me forget names.
Building Healthy Communities.
Fresno Building Healthy Communities.
Wonderful groups.
Yes, and I think the importance of these coalitions is because of our backgrounds and our expertise, having these coalitions is essential for a full unified effort. Right, addressing our community's concerns in a culturally appropriate manners.
We're doing this program, we're recording it on the 23rd of September. We're in the middle of tremendous, I guess you could say, excitement or dismay at what's going on in Washington. But what it is a moment of the need to see democracy exercised. So
Right.
all these groups that you've named, all your partners, are committed to this idea that it is very important to not lose the republic. It's
Right.
very important. We'll have the republic, says Ben Franklin, if we will take care of it, if we'll preserve it, if we work it. Thanks for what you have been doing since September with Leadership Council and what your group has been doing for so long to engage the community.
Yes, and I don't. I think. Thank you for the for the thanks, but I don't think this would ever be possible without having partners such as yourselves to be able to bring word out on these important changes. And I think most importantly, we couldn't do it without the residents themselves. Them having. Providing those opportunities for them to realize the power. I don't like to say that we empower. I like to say that we help people find the power that they already have and know how to channel it.
A lot of groups say, and we empower people. It's like a better way to say is we unleash the power.
Exactly, exactly.
Nice. Now, another topic that is part of our VCA would be the voter centers themselves.
Yes.
What can you tell us about this new phenomenon we're going to be seeing? What's a voter center?
I think it goes back to the name. It's the voter's choice. And so what that means is, as opposed to the precinct model before, where you had to go to a specific office at a specific time, and if there was errors, there would be errors in your ballot. Now with these 53 voter centers, there will be additional hours to vote. And then you have the flexibility of going to whichever one you please, the one closest to work, to your child's school, wherever. And so these voter centers will be open as early as February 22nd. So on February 22nd, 2020, which is 11 days before the election, plus election day, 10 voter centers will be open. And then 3 days before, on February 29th, in addition to election day, an additional 43 voter centers will be available throughout the county.
Oh man, so there's even like a staggered opening or availability.
Yeah, and actually in the calculation, as opposed to the prior, say 11-hour window that you had to vote, now there's about a 93, 96-hour window of opportunity, not only to vote, but to receive information on the whole voting process, receive assistance in your language that you understand better. There's about, I think, 11 or 13 languages that will be, services that will be provided through the Voters' Choice Act. And again, it goes back to the convenience and accessibility. Any voter in Fresno County can go to any vote center as long as they're open.
I did go to the web today to see something, and it was interesting. Tell me about this where it says voter center citing process development, and that there are 14 criteria for where they've put these 53 centers.
Right.
Availability to public transit, communities with low votes, population centers, language minority communities, voters with disabilities, communities with low rates of vehicle ownership, on and on. The very same people we're trying to get to not participate in the census, they're the very hard to count people.
Right.
It's like we're kind of doubling down on engaging everyone. How do you see this playing out, Luis?
Well, I think it's important to understand with the communities that we work with, a lot of times community members are forced to think between, do I go out and vote with the previous model? Do I go out and vote, or do I work and put food on the table? And that's the tough life situations that
That's
they've
terrible.
been in. Exactly. And so now what this Voters' Choice Act does is exactly open up more opportunities. The first off, getting your ballot in the mail, which is not an additional step. Any of the voter centers. In addition to that, there's 43 ballot drop boxes secured I think they said 800 plus pounds, almost a ton of weight secured, where people can drop off their ballot just like they were driving up to drop off their mail.
Is there, we've got about 4 more minutes about the VCA.
Yes.
Is there anything else that we haven't even touched on that you really want to make sure we don't avoid mentioning?
I think first of all, if you are, ensure that your voter registration is up to date. That's point blank period. Because if you don't, your ballot will not be mailed to you on February 3rd. Second is that ballot mailed after February 3rd is a real ballot. Say you lose it, that is fine. Say you damage it, say the dog ate it, say the children colored on it, it is fine. The voter centers can produce you a new ballot and you could vote then and there.
Boy, I saw that on a clip that it showed a fella that I got a bad one, and she gives him a new one. What else is going to be important to animate our viewers and listeners to definitely this year decide to vote? We've got to vote.
Yes, definitely. I think in addition to that is recognizing the accessibility of the vote centers. For our communities with disabilities, there is, as opposed to one machine, now there's more accessibility in the buildings with the vote centers and additional tools. For our Spanish-speaking community, by law, there's a requirement to have a Spanish speaker in every single vote center in Fresno County. And also for our Punjabi-speaking, Hmong-speaking, Vietnamese-speaking, the county made it an effort to have language proficient personnel at those locations where it will be culturally relevant.
So when you said the county made this a priority, whom should we be thanking right now? Like the county's a big thing. Who do we want to thank? Give a shout out to.
All the community-based organizations involved in this.
Wow.
I think it's over 20, 30 organizations that have been involved, at least in Fresno County.
Boy, that's great.
Yes, and you know, it is really much a community-based effort that created these opportunities through the Voters' Choice Act.
Is there an expectation of a certain increase? I mean, do they have a goal of, we want 10% more voters, or any hopes?
You know what? My hope is for 100% voter turnout in Fresno County. You know, ultimately, a democracy functions with participation and with information. And so I'd want those as accessible as possible.
Anything else about the ballots? Anything else that you haven't said enough about? Anything before we talk a little bit about this effort to do a mayoral forum?
I think emphasizing the need for information. We're in a time where we're so interconnected on our phones that we have the opportunity to access countless sources, right? Of whether it's news sources, etc., about the candidates that we're voting for, about the policies that will be implemented. You know, I would just like, and then beyond that, you know, understanding that our vote is not, we're not voting for people, but I think the underlying factor is that we're voting on our values and what do we value as citizens. And that can be embodied in the policies themselves, that could be embodied in the candidates that you may vote, but at the end of the day, taking action to ensure your voice is heard in whatever manner that you can is important, whether you can vote or not vote.
This was a very helpful program for me. I hope our viewers and listeners have enjoyed this first part about the VCA, how important this new possibility of voting, the Voters' Choice Act, that we can actually vote. Now, switching gears, briefly, what did you want to tell us about the effort of this coalition of like-minded groups to do something to help us understand our civic responsibility regarding the mayoral election? What do you want to tell us?
Yes, first off, it's understanding with this primary election for the city of Fresno is very significant because there are, in terms of, you know, publicity and front running, There's two candidates that are up, and there's 7 candidates in total up for the mayorship, and within this is understanding that with this primary election, if one candidate receives 50% plus 1 vote, they are the winner. So this is why primaries are important, because in local jurisdictions such as Fresno, that it is the determining election. Now say not one candidate receives 50%, then it goes into a runoff in the general election. But at the end of the day, the general election, just like any primary election, is just as essential because it allows you to really funnel in any candidate that is more reflective of your values.
Can you say something about Fresno4All?
Yes, Fresno4All, we are a coalition of all the organizations I mentioned earlier, and our focus is to educate community members on the new VCA changes. We're doing canvassing efforts around our neighborhoods, ensuring people have updated registrations. And then and I think just as important, is we're providing opportunities to engage with the candidates. At the end of the day, Fresno is the 5th largest city in California, and being mayor of this city is no small feat. And in a city that is so diverse, it's important to hear from all Fresnans and to ensure that, we're being accountable to all Fresnans.
You've prepared a certain survey.
Yes.
Very nice. We might just show it for a moment or talk about it for a minute. We have a minute left. I saw it. It's asking people their priorities and on and on. Short form, what's the survey about?
Again, we're community-based organizations and we want the priorities of our communities to be forefront. And so with this community priorities survey, what we're doing is literally understanding what do you prioritize as a resident. Clean air, healthy land use, community justice around policing, community justice around immigration. Within each of these categories that our organizations work with, what do you want to see accomplished for our city?
I hope people do that survey. It's right
Definitely.
there. We did post a little link. You can go and look at it.
Thank you.
Luis, I can't wait to have you back for another program to talk more about, it could be on the census or about other projects that you're doing. Thank you for being in Fresno. Thank you for what you do at Leadership Council. And we'll be looking forward to a good turnout at the forum whenever that happens.
Yes.
And for a lot of people participating because of the new VCA.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Take care. God bless you.